They say architects see the world differently. We see geometry in chaos, order in randomness, beauty in simple lines. But I didn't see anything. I missed the cracks in the foundation until everything started crumbling down. I met her at a contemporary art exhibition in downtown Chicago. I went there reluctantly. My friend, a sculptor, had insisted. Marcus, you need to get out of your cave, he'd said. Nobody ever died from blueprints, but nobody truly lived from them either. Now I think I should have stayed home, surrounded by my projects and models. Sarah stood by an installation made of rusty pipes and broken glass. In an elegant black dress, champagne flute in hand, she seemed too alive for this sterile space. Her auburn hair blazed under the cold gallery lights like a warning signal I failed to heed. What's your take? Is this art or garbage? She asked without turning around, as if she knew I'd been watching her for several minutes. Garbage can be art if properly organized, I replied, studying the construction. But here, the artist tried too hard. Real chaos can't be created intentionally. She turned and I saw her eyes, green as spring leaves. There was curiosity dancing in them, and something else I should have recognized but didn't. You're an architect, aren't you? She asked, smiling knowingly. Is it that obvious? Only an architect would discuss the structure of chaos with such a serious face. We talked all evening. Sarah turned out to be a journalist at Elite Quarterly, a glossy magazine for those who considered themselves the cream of society. She wrote about culture, interviewed celebrities, attended every significant event in city. Her world was the complete opposite of mine. I was used to the quiet of my design studio, the smell of pencil shavings and fresh paper. My days were filled with calculations, blueprints, and meetings with contractors. I created spaces for other people's lives while my own remained empty. Sarah stormed into it like a hurricane. She called it odd hours, dragged me to social events, introduced me to people whose names I'd only seen in society columns. I resisted, but her enthusiasm was infectious. Marcus, you can't hide behind your blueprints forever, she'd say, lying on the couch in my studio, flipping through a glossy magazine. Life is passing you by while you're drawing other people's homes. I looked at her, barefoot, in jeans and my shirt, and thought she was right. Maybe I had lived like a hermit for too long. Maybe it was time to let a little chaos into my life. Her parents met me with Arctic coldness. Victor Andrews, owner of Andrews Construction Empire, looked right through me as if I were made of glass. Barbara Andrews, a polished woman with a perpetually dissatisfied expression, barely concealed her contempt. And what exactly do you do, Marcus? Barbara took a sip of wine, stretching each word as if they caused her physical discomfort. The silence hung in the air, broken only by the clink of silver against fine china. I'm an architect. I straightened my back, feeling my neck tense. I have my own studio. We're currently working on a business center project and yes, Sarah mentioned something like that. She waved her hand dismissively, cutting me off mid-sentence. And how's that going? Many commissions. Every word dripped with venom. I could physically feel the contempt falling from her lips, painted with blood-red lipstick. Victor Andrews grunted, not looking up from his plate. His massive signet ring gleamed dully in the crystal chandelier light as he methodically cut his steak, as methodically as he eliminated his competitors. You know, Marcus, he looked me in the eyes for the first time that evening, and his gaze held something between pity and disgust. In our business, reputation is everything. And reputation. He paused, dabbing his lips with a snow-white napkin. You either have it or you don't. You can't trust serious projects to random people. Sarah froze beside me, going pale. Her fingers, clutching my hand under the table, turned to ice. And I suddenly understood clearly. Each of us here was playing a role in a performance where the ending was predetermined. And my role was that of an extra who would soon be led off stage. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. I stayed silent, though everything inside was boiling. That evening, she said I'd handle myself well, that her parents were just worried about her, that everything would work out with time. I believed her, or wanted to believe. We got married a year later. No lavish ceremony, just close friends and family. Sarah was beautiful in a simple white dress. She glowed with happiness, and I thought I could endure any trial for that light. If only I had known what trials awaited us. The first cracks in our marriage appeared imperceptibly, like hairline fractures in a foundation. At first, they could be ignored, written off as fatigue, as daily troubles as anything. I was trained to spot flaws in other people's designs, but in my own life, I turned out to be blind. Sarah started coming home later and later. She smelled of expensive cigarettes and unfamiliar cologne. Editorial meetings, she'd say, carelessly tossing her designer bag onto the armchair. You know how it is. I did, or thought I did. My new project, a high-rise residential complex in River North, demanded everything I had. I spent nights over blueprints, calculating layout options, arguing with contractors. This was my chance to prove, primarily to myself, that I was worth something in this world of superficial glamour. Again with your blueprints, Sarah stood in the doorway of my studio, swirling a glass of Cabernet. It was around midnight. You know, Richard gave me an interesting assignment today. I'll be interviewing a famous architect from London. Richard, her new editor-in-chief. She mentioned his name more and more often, as if savoring its taste. I looked up from my drawings. That's good. When's the interview? Next week. Need to fly to London for 3 days. Something in her voice made me alert. Maybe the excessive casualness, or, on the contrary, two carefully chosen words. Who are you going with? With Richard, of course. He's leading this project. Of course. I watched as she took a sip of wine, as dark red drops slid down the glass. How her eyes sparkled in the dim studio light. You're not even jealous. She smiled, but there was something predatory in that smile. Won't even ask why I'm home so late. You're a grown woman, Sarah. You have your own life. Exactly, she spun around sharply, her silk robe swirling behind her. I have my own life, and you have your blueprints. The next day, I ran into her mother at Whole Foods. Barbara Andrews was studying the wine selection with the air of a sommelier. Ah, Marcus, her voice dripped honey. How's the project? Still drawing little houses. Actually, it's a 1,000-unit residential complex. Yes, of course. By the way, did you know your wife is flying to London? With that, what's his name? Editor? Very promising young man, and most importantly, from the right kind of family. Her eyes bored into me, searching for traces of emotion on my face. I didn't give her that satisfaction. I know. Business trip. Business, she smirked. Well, if that's what helps you sleep at night. Sarah left 4 days later. I couldn't see her off at the airport, an important meeting with a client. Though, truth be told, I didn't even try to reschedule. Something had snapped between us. Some invisible thread had broken. She called every evening. Talked about the interview, about London, about some exhibitions. Her voice sounded excited, as if trying to hide something important behind the flood of words. On the third day, she didn't call. I sat in my studio until deep into the night, staring mindlessly at the monitor. Tried to work, but the lines blurred before my eyes. Fragments of conversations, glances, casual phrases kept spinning in my head. The phone rang around 2 a.m. My sister Kate's name lit up on the screen. Marcus. Her voice sounded strange. Are you sitting down? What happened? I just got a call from Marina. You remember, my friend from the travel agency. She saw Sarah at the Dorchester Hotel restaurant. And I felt my neck going numb. She wasn't alone, Marcus. And it wasn't that architect she was supposed to interview. I said nothing. I could hear my sister's heavy breathing through the phone. Marcus, you there? Yes, thanks for telling me. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I hung up and stared out the window for a long time. Outside, rain was blurring the city lights. Somewhere there in London, in an expensive restaurant, sat my wife, and with her was a man who, unlike me, knew the rules of their world. Morning brought a message from Sarah. Sorry, had an important dinner with the publisher. Couldn't talk. Kiss. I didn't respond. She returned 2 days later, tanned, radiant, with a new silk scarf around her neck. She smelled of unfamiliar perfume. Why didn't you pick me up? Her voice carried a note of reproach. I texted you my arrival time. Was busy. I didn't look up for my drawings. How was London? Amazing. You won't believe we. Who's we? She stumbled mid-sentence. The studio fell silent, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. I finally looked up at her. How was dinner at the Dorchester? Did the publisher enjoy it? She went pale, then suddenly laughed, sharp, unnatural. Oh, so that's it. They've already reported to you. Been having me followed. I'm not the one doing the following. You're the one being followed. This whole world of yours is one big closed system where everyone knows everyone and everyone watches everyone else. What do you know about it? She stepped closer and I caught the scent of alcohol. Sitting here, buried in your projects. Building homes for others while you can't even afford a decent apartment yourself. But Richard can, right? I spoke quietly, but each word landed like a slap. He's got it all. The connections, the name, the reputation. Everything your parents wanted. Don't you dare. She grabbed a pencil from the desk and hurled it at me. Don't you dare talk about my parents. You're just a failure who thought he was some kind of creative genius. When really what? I stood up, feeling my hands shake. Finish it. When really I've outgrown all this. Your principles, your pride, your mediocrity. Yes, Richard is different. He knows what he wants, and he takes it. And he took you. The slap burned my cheek. Sarah stood there, breathing heavily, her eyes blazing with anger. You brought this on yourself, she hissed through clenched teeth. You destroyed everything. After she left, I didn't leave the studio for a week. Worked around the clock, sleeping in short bursts at my desk. Clients demanded project revisions, changes to layouts, modifications to plans. I mechanically made the changes, feeling neither inspiration nor interest. Just moving lines around on the screen like some meaningless computer game. Kate called every day. I ignored the calls. What could I tell her? That she was right? That I was to blame? Didn't see the obvious, clung to illusions, believed in a fairy tale about love conquering social barriers. Sarah collected her things while I was out, left her keys on the table with a note. I'm sorry. This is better for everyone. The handwriting was firm, confident, no trace of doubt or regret. Her presence felt even stronger in the empty apartment. The scent of her perfume had soaked into the curtains. A bottle of shampoo remained in the bathroom. I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. A forgotten hair clip lay on the closet shelf. Such small things hurt more than her words that last evening. The divorce went through quickly and quietly. Sarah didn't claim any property. Apparently, Richard had already provided her with everything she needed. I silently signed the papers, trying not to look at her glowing face and the new ring on her finger. Then hell broke loose. Clients started backing out of projects one after another. Sorry, but we've decided to go with a more experienced firm. Unfortunately, upper management insists on a different contractor. We've been recommended another architect. I knew whose handiwork this was. Victor Andrews didn't like to lose, and I had lost. Failed to meet his expectations, couldn't keep his daughter, didn't fit into their world. Now he was methodically destroying what little I had left. Mr. Walker, my head engineer, Jack, stood in the studio doorway. People are asking, will there be salaries this month? I looked at him through bleary eyes. I hadn't slept in 3 days, trying to find a way out of this situation. The bank account was dwindling, debts mounting. There will be. I'm selling my car. Maybe we should talk to them. Find a compromise. With whom? I laughed bitterly. With Victor Andrews? With his construction empire? Or with his new son-in-law, who now controls all the cultural coverage in the city? Jack stood silent, shifting from foot to foot. You know, I have an offer from another firm. They're willing to take the whole team. Go. I turned to the window. Tell everyone. I understand. No hard feelings. By evening, the office had grown unnaturally quiet. One by one, employees packed their things, said goodbye, wished me luck. Their eyes held sympathy mixed with relief. They'd managed to jump ship before it sank completely. I sat in darkness, watching the night city. Somewhere out there, in gleaming skyscrapers, in expensive restaurants, in exclusive clubs, the fates of people like me were being decided. People who dared to rise above their station. My phone buzzed. A message from Kate. Turn on PBS. Architecture Now. On screen, Sarah, immaculate in a cream suit, was interviewing some trendy architect. And now let's talk about young professionals. How do you feel about those trying to enter the profession without proper background, connections, support? The architect, a silver haired man with contemptuously pursed lips, shook his head. You know, in our field, amateurism is dangerous. You can't trust serious projects to people without a name, without a success story. It's not just a matter of reputation, it's a matter of safety. I turned off the TV, my face reflected in the dark screen, gaunt, unshaven, with bloodshot eyes. Well, they'd achieved their goal. My name was now associated with failure, with unprofessionalism, with amateurism. There was a knock at the door. A courier stood there with a bouquet of white lilies. Mr. Walker, this is for you. A note was attached to the bouquet, written in Barbara Andrews' familiar handwriting. Don't grieve too long. In your position, it's better to start fresh, preferably in another city. I crumpled the note and threw the bouquet in the trash. The lilies scattered across the floor, exuding their cloying fragrance. How symbolic. Her favorite flowers now lay in garbage, like my dreams and plans. I didn't go home. Wandered through the night city, studying buildings that once inspired me. Now they seemed alien, hostile, as if the whole city had turned against me, pushing me out. At dawn, I found myself near our old house. Light burned in the window of her former study. I imagined her sitting there, writing another article about the importance of reputation and connections in the architectural business. Did she ever think about me? Or had I become just an unfortunate episode in her brilliant career? Hey, buddy, got a light? Two guys in hoodies materialized as if from nowhere. Don't smoke. What if we find one? One of them pulled out a knife. I didn't even try to resist. Just stood there watching as they emptied my pockets, took my phone, wallet. Barely felt the pain. Inside was just emptiness. That night, when I was mudded, I understood a simple truth. There was nowhere left to fall, which meant it was time to start climbing. Kate found me in the ER, silently sat beside me while the doctor stitched me up, then drove me to her place, made me eat and sleep. In the morning, she placed a laptop in front of me. Boston just announced a competition for a new cultural center design. Decent budget 3-month deadline. I've already paid for your ticket. Kate, don't argue. They've burned all your bridges here. There, no one knows you, your ex, or her daddy with his connections. She was right. This city had nothing left for me. Every corner reminded me of Sarah, of betrayal, of shattered hopes. I left the next day. Boston greeted me with biting wind and drizzling rain. I rented a tiny apartment on the outskirts and dove headfirst into work. No office, no team, no connections, just me, a computer, and an idea that wouldn't let me sleep. I envisioned the cultural center as a system of multi-level spaces flowing into each other. Glass, metal, and wood intertwined in a unified structure, reflecting the merger of past and future. It was a challenge to all canons, all rules, and possibly my last chance. I worked around the clock, forgetting to eat and sleep. Every line, every calculation had to be perfect. I no longer had the luxury of error. A week before the deadline, there was a knock at my door. A gray-haired man in a worn coat stood there. Mr. Walker, I'm Robert Mitchell, chairman of the competition jury. May I come in? I silently let him in. He spent a long time studying the drawings on the walls, examining the model on the table, then turned to me. You know, in 30 years in this profession, I've learned to feel real architecture. It should tell a story. I see your story in every line. It's pain and rebirth. Have you come to tell me I didn't make the cut? I've come to offer you a job, regardless of the results. A month later, the project won. 6 months after that, construction began. I assembled a new team, young and hungry for success. We worked like possessed, making adjustments, improving details, perfecting every element. Then something unexpected happened. The project was nominated for the Crystal Dome, the country's premier architectural award. 5 works were shortlisted, among them, a mixed-use complex designed by Victor Andrews' company. The ceremony was held in New York in a historic mansion on Park Avenue. I sat in the audience, listening to pompous speeches about the importance of tradition and generational continuity. In the next row, I noticed a familiar auburn head, Sarah, in a strict gray suit, recorder at the ready. She now wrote an architectural criticism column. Next to her sat Richard, no longer just an editor, but publisher of the media house. He smiled condescendingly, his hand on the back of her chair. Owner. And now, the evening's main nomination, the host theatrically opened the envelope. Project of the Year. I wasn't watching the stage. I was watching Victor Andrews sitting in the front row with the air of a man already accepting congratulations. His groomed face, his massive ring, his perfectly styled hair. The New Horizons Cultural Center, Boston. Architect, Marcus Walker. The hall erupted in applause. I rose slowly. From the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah flinch, saw her father turn pale. Thank you. I took the statuette, turned it in my hands. You know, every project is a story. Mine began with defeat, with betrayal, with a moment when I lost everything. Work, reputation, faith in myself. Silence fell over the hall. I want to thank the people without whom this project wouldn't have happened. My ex-wife, for leaving and allowing me to focus completely on work. Her father, for teaching me to trust no one. And especially, her new husband, the publisher of Elite Quarterly. Richard, I hope you'll give this event the coverage it deserves in your publication. I saw Richard grip his chair arms, saw Sarah lower her head, saw Victor Andrews furiously whispering into his phone. But I didn't care anymore. I hadn't won a prize. I'd won back the right to respect myself. At the banquet, a young woman approached me, an art historian from San Francisco. We talked all evening about new trends in architecture, about the importance of balance between form and content, about how crucial it is to remain true to yourself. I was the last to leave the hall. At the coat check, I ran into Sarah. She tried to say something, but I just nodded and walked past. Outside, snow was falling. I turned up my coat collar and slowly walked through nighttime Manhattan. Somewhere ahead loomed new projects, new ideas, new life. And the old one stayed here, along with the Crystal Dome statuette, with Sarah's surprised face, with her father's impotent rage. I had finally let it all go. They say architects see the world differently. We see beauty in simple lines, order in chaos, hope in ruins. And now I knew for certain, something new can be built from any ruins. The key is laying the right foundation.